The call for help. The vastness of space was never a place of peace. War and conflict loomed in every corner, and today it was no different. On board the Bulan starship, Murloc, a seasoned warrior of his kind, lay silently in his bunk. The ship's metal walls seemed to press in on him, the weight of their situation making every second feel like an eternity. The hum of the engines did nothing to mask the tension that filled the air. The Thren were closing in. Their once great fleet, a symbol of pride for the Bulan people, was now little more than prey for the ruthless invaders. Murloc shifted, his ice-blue eye stalks moving sluggishly as he draped one arm over them, trying to shut out the bitter reality. The war had gone from bad to worse. In just a few short years, the Thren had wiped out a dozen Bulan colonies, cracking open their birthing pools and incinerating their cities with terrifying precision. What had once been a vibrant civilization teetered on the brink of extinction. His wingmate, Cavil, slumped onto the bunk across from him with a defeated sigh. Another colony lost, millions gone. His voice was hollow, his eye stalks drooping in despair. We'll be extinct in a decade if this keeps up. Murloc felt the weight of those words, but he also knew there was one last hope. A slim chance at survival that the Bulan leadership had deemed both insane and suicidal. The humans, they were right. Murloc clicked his mandibles in frustration. They had warned the Bulan about the Thren's ruthlessness. They had even offered to help. But the Bulan, like many species before them, had scoffed at the idea of allying with humanity. Stories of the humans' brutality, their bloodlust, had become the stuff of nightmares throughout the galaxy. No one wanted to be associated with such a violent race. "Are you mad?" Cavil hissed, his voice filled with shock. "You want to bring those psychotic humans here? They'll kill us just as easily as the Thren." But Murloc remained silent. His mind was made up. They had no other choice. The humans might be their last chance. The decision to trust the humans. The Bulan defense fleet hovered in the vast emptiness of space, battered, outnumbered, and seemingly destined for defeat. The relentless Thren warlords had pushed them to the brink of extinction, and the once proud Bulan civilization was crumbling. Yet, in this moment of desperation, a single hope remained, one that many among the Bulans still refused to acknowledge. The humans. Murloc's mind raced as the Thren fleet moved in closer. He knew they had no chance of surviving another encounter. The defense fleet had been shredded over the past few months. For every Thren ship they managed to destroy, the warlords sent 10 more. Murloc's sharp mandibles clicked as he reviewed the cold, brutal reality of their situation. They needed help, and they needed it now. "I can't believe you're seriously considering this," Cavil hissed, his eye stalks shifting nervously as they scanned the bridge for any sign of hope. "The humans are maniacs. They'll destroy us all before the Thren even get the chance." Murloc's gaze remained fixed on the holographic display of the Thren fleet advancing through the starfield. "Cavil, we have no other choice. We are facing annihilation. Our leaders have turned to every ally, every corner of the galaxy, but no one is willing to stand against the Thren. Only the humans can match their ruthlessness, their hunger for survival." Cavil let out a low hiss, retreating back into his chair. "But at what cost? The humans are monsters. We've all heard the stories." Murloc knew the stories too well. The humans had been relatively new to the galactic community, only arriving on the interstellar stage a few centuries ago. At first, they were considered weak, naive, too emotional, too attached to ideals like cooperation and peace. But those assumptions have been brutally disproven when a small human colony was attacked by a band of space pirates. What followed was a response so swift and vicious that the entire galaxy took notice. The pirates were eradicated, their homeworld reduced to molten slag, and the message was clear: do not cross humanity. "They warned us," Murloc said quietly, his voice low but firm. "When we first encountered the humans, they offered to help us, to form an alliance. They knew the Thren were coming, but we were too proud to listen." Kavol clicked his mandibles, a sound of nervous frustration. And now you want to call on those same humans to save us. Murloc turned to face his wingmate, his multiple eyes locking onto Kavol's. Yes, it's the only way. As the Fren fleet inched closer, the alarm blaring on the ship's bridge grew louder. The entire Bulan fleet was now trapped between a moon and the planet they were supposed to be defending. There was no escape this time. Murloc stood, his claws tapping nervously on the control panel in front of him. His heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to make the call. They had been avoiding this decision for weeks, but there was no time left for hesitation. His species' survival hung in the balance. The communication officer looked at him, uncertain. "Are we really doing this, Captain?" Murloc's voice was steady. "Yes. Open the channel." The screen flickered to life and a human face appeared. The man on the other end had a scar running across his jaw, his sharp blue eyes filled with intensity. He wore the uniform of the United Terran Alliance, the military wing of humanity that had become infamous across the galaxy for its brutal efficiency. His expression was unreadable, his tone calm. "Captain Murloc, I presume," the human said, his voice deep and authoritative. Murloc inclined his head slightly. "Commander, we are in need of assistance. The Thren have us surrounded. Our fleet is decimated. We need your help." The human leaned back in his chair, his face betraying no emotion. "You want our help now? After refusing our offer years ago? After watching your colonies fall, one by one?" Murloc's mandibles twitched, a sign of his frustration. "We had our reasons for refusing. Our leaders believed we could fight this war on our own. We were wrong. We need you now. Please." The human commander remained silent for a moment, considering. Then he leaned forward, his piercing gaze focused directly on Murloc. "You understand the cost of calling us. When we fight, we don't hold back. We fight to win, no matter what. You've seen what we do to our enemies. Do you truly want to unleash that on your homeworld?" Murloc's throat felt dry as he swallowed. "If it's the only way to survive, then yes. We are willing to pay that price." The human smiled slightly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Very well, Captain. We'll send a fleet to your position. Hold out as long as you can." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Kavol let out a low growl. "You've just doomed us all." Murloc said nothing, his eyes fixed on the display of the Thren fleet, now closing in for the kill. All they could do now was wait and hope the humans would arrive in time. Hours passed, and the Bulan defense fleet fought with everything they had left. Wave after wave of Thren ships assaulted them, tearing through their weakened lines. Explosions rocked the ship as their shields began to fail. Murloc's heart raced, knowing that they couldn't hold out much longer. Just as all hope seemed lost, the scanners picked up something on the far edge of the system. At first, it was just a blip, a small, almost insignificant anomaly. But then more appeared. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. Kavol stared at the display, his eye stalks widening in disbelief. It can't be. Murloc's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him. The humans, they're here. The first wave of human ships dropped out of hyperspace like predatory birds descending on their prey. Sleek, black, and bristling with weapons, the human fleet made its presence known immediately. Without hesitation, they opened fire on the Thren ships. The Thren, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of such a massive fleet, scrambled to regroup. But it was too late. The humans tore through their formations with brutal precision, their ships moving faster and hitting harder than anything the Thren had ever faced before. The Bulan watched in stunned silence as the tide of battle shifted before their eyes. Where moments ago they had been on the verge of total destruction, now the Thren were being systematically dismantled. Explosions lit up the sky as human warships unleashed a relentless barrage of firepower, leaving no Thren vessel untouched. Murloc couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he watched the humans in action. They fought like nothing he had ever seen before, ruthless, efficient, and utterly unyielding. This was the force that had struck fear into the hearts of so many across the galaxy, the force that had been offered to the Bulan years ago, and which they had so foolishly refused. Kavol turned to Melok, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. "What have we unleashed?" Melok's mandibles clicked as he watched a Thren cruiser erupt into a ball of fire. The only ones who could save us. As the Thren fleet crumbled under the relentless assault, Melok knew the war was far from over. The humans had come to their aid, but at what cost? And what price would they demand in return? The tide turns, but at what cost? The aftermath of the battle was a surreal contrast to the chaos that had unfolded mere hours before. The once dominating Thren fleet was now reduced to scattered debris, floating aimlessly in the void. Fire still raged across the remnants of the Bulan ships, but they had survived. They had lived to fight another day, but it wasn't because of their own strength. The humans had arrived, and they had turned the tide of the war in a single brutal stroke. Melok stood on the bridge of his battered command ship, staring out at the wreckage. His crew moved slowly, tending to repairs, but there was a sense of collective disbelief hanging in the air. They had faced certain annihilation and had been pulled back from the edge by a force none of them fully understood. Kavol approached, his eye stalks flickering with nervous energy. "It's over for now. The Thren have been routed, but..." His voice trailed off, his fear evident. "But the humans are still here." Melok finished for him, his gaze remaining fixed on the human fleet, which hovered ominously just beyond the debris field. The humans had not withdrawn after the battle. In fact, more of their ships had arrived, forming a wall of power and dominance that sent an uneasy ripple through the Bulan ranks. They had saved the Bulan from extinction, but their continued presence felt less like an alliance and more like an occupation. "I can't believe they did it," Kavol muttered. "I've never seen anything like it. One moment we were doomed, and the next, the Thren were nothing, obliterated." Melok nodded slowly, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. "They don't fight like us, Kavol. They don't fight like anyone in the galaxy. They come at their enemies with everything they have. No hesitation, no mercy. It's what makes them so feared. And now we've brought them here," Kavol said quietly, his voice edged with dread. "What if they don't leave?" Melok had no answer. He could feel the same worry gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. The humans had come to their aid, but they had their own agenda. No one in the galaxy truly understood what motivated them. They weren't conquerors in the traditional sense, at least, not in a way that was easy to predict. They didn't want territory or tribute like the Thren, but they had a way of changing everything they touched, for better or worse. As Melok contemplated their next move, a sharp beep echoed through the bridge, followed by the flickering of the central display. The familiar face of the human commander appeared once again, his expression unreadable. "Captain Melok," the human said in that same calm, measured tone, "I assume you're satisfied with the results of the battle." Melok's mandibles twitched. He had to tread carefully now. "Yes, Commander. Your assistance was decisive. The Thren were annihilated. You saved us." The human commander smiled, but there was something cold behind it. "We did what we promised, but we're not done here yet." Melok's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" The commander leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes glinting with purpose. "We didn't come all this way just to destroy a few Thren ships. The war isn't over, Captain. The Thren will regroup, and they'll come back stronger. If you want to survive, you'll need more than a victory today. You'll need us." Melok felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was what he had feared. The humans hadn't come as saviors. They had come as partners in a deal they hadn't fully explained. A deal that might cost the Bulan far more than they were prepared to give. "What exactly are you proposing?" Melok asked, keeping his voice steady. The commander's smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "An alliance, Captain. A full military and economic alliance between the Bulan and the United Terran Alliance. You need us, and we need allies in this sector. Together, We can wipe out the Thren once and for all. But if you want our continued support, there are terms. Kavol, who had been listening quietly, couldn't hold back any longer. Terms? What kind of terms? The human's eyes flicked to Kavol, sizing him up with a glance before turning back to Murloc. Your fleet will fall under UTA command during joint operations. We'll provide you with the weapons, technology, and tactical support you need to fight the Thren, but you'll be expected to follow our lead. We don't operate on half measures. Murloc's heart sank. This was no simple alliance. The humans were asking for control. They weren't interested in being equals. They wanted to absorb the Bulan into their military machine, to use them as another cog in their war effort. And if we refuse? Murloc asked quietly, already knowing the answer. The human commander's gaze hardened. Then you'll be on your own the next time the Thren come. And they will come, Captain. They won't stop until every last one of your people is dead or enslaved. A tense silence hung over the bridge as Murloc weighed their options. He could feel his crew watching him, waiting for his decision. He knew what they were thinking. They had no choice. The Bulan fleet was in shambles, their worlds vulnerable. Without the humans, they were doomed. But accepting the humans' terms meant surrendering more than just military command. It meant allowing their culture, their way of life, to be reshaped by a species that valued victory above all else. The Bulan prided themselves on their independence, their unity as a people. Would they lose that if they became pawns in the humans' war? Kavol shifted nervously beside him. Murloc, we can't trust them. They'll take over everything. We'll become like one of their colonies. Murloc glanced at his friend, his mind racing. He understood Kavol's fear. But the grim reality was clear. The Bulan couldn't afford to fight alone anymore. Commander, Murloc said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him, we will consider your terms. But this isn't a decision I can make on my own. I will have to consult with our leaders. The human nodded, his expression softening slightly. Take your time, Captain. But remember, time isn't something you have much of. The Thren will be back sooner than you think. With that, the transmission ended, leaving the bridge in an uneasy silence. Murloc exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. What are we going to do? Kavol asked, his voice low. Murloc didn't answer right away. He stared out into the void, where the human fleet loomed like a silent storm. They had won the battle, but the war, both against the Thren and within themselves, was just beginning. We don't have a choice, Kavol, Murloc said finally. Without the humans, we won't survive. Kavol let out a low hiss of frustration, but he didn't argue. He knew Murloc was right. Hours later, Murloc sat alone in his quarters, staring at the small communication terminal on his desk. He had already sent the message to the Bulan leadership, outlining the humans' offer and the grim reality they faced. Now, all he could do was wait for their response. His mind wandered as he considered what lay ahead. The humans had shown their power today, but they had also revealed their intentions. They weren't interested in being saviors. They were conquerors in their own way, conquerors of opportunity. The door to his quarters slid open, and Kavol entered quietly. I just heard from the fleet. The repairs are progressing, but it will take time before we're battle-ready again. Murloc nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. What do you think, Kavol, about the humans? Kavol hesitated, then spoke softly. I don't like them. They fight like animals, with no regard for anything but victory. But they saved us. Without them, we'd be dead right now. So maybe we have to be like them for a while if we want to survive. Murloc sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't know if we can ever be like them, Kavol, but I do know one thing. The galaxy will never be the same after this. The humans had arrived, and with them came a new era for the Bulan, a future that was uncertain, dangerous, and full of hard choices. And as much as Murloc wished it could be different, he knew deep down that this was just the beginning. The war with the Thren would continue, but now there was another battle ahead. one that would determine the very soul of his people. And in that battle, the humans would be both their greatest ally and their greatest threat. The cost of allegiance. The days following the battle were tense and filled with uncertainty. The Bulan leadership had convened an emergency council meeting to discuss the human commander's offer. Melok and his most trusted advisors were summoned to the High Command's central chamber, a grand hall adorned with the flags and symbols of the Bulan Empire. The chamber was abuzz with activity as representatives from various factions and fleets assembled. Melok took his seat among them, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on him. He had done everything in his power to present the situation accurately, but he could see the skepticism and fear in the eyes of his fellow leaders. The room was filled with low murmurs and hushed discussions as the leaders waited for the council to begin. Finally, the chamber quieted as the central podium lit up with a holographic display. The leader of the council, Elder Lurik, a respected figure known for his wisdom and diplomatic skill, stepped up to address the assembly. His face, etched with years of experience, looked weary but resolute. "Fellow leaders," Elder Lurik began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we are faced with a critical juncture. The human race has intervened in our conflict with the Thren, saving us from near annihilation. Their assistance came at a cost we must now consider carefully." He gestured to the holographic display, which showed the human fleet in all its imposing might. The image was followed by a detailed account of the humans' proposal, a full military and economic alliance, with Bulan forces falling under UTA command during joint operations. "We must decide," Elder Lurik continued, "whether to accept these terms and enter into an alliance that could reshape the very fabric of our society, or to reject their offer and face the consequences alone." A murmur of discontent rippled through the chamber. Many voices were raised in protest, questioning the wisdom of aligning with a species they barely understood. Melok could see the fear and anger in their expressions. They were not just worried about their immediate survival, they were concerned about their future as a people. "Elder Lurik," Melok said, rising to speak, "we must face the reality of our situation. The Thren will not rest until they have exterminated us. The humans offer us a chance to survive, but it comes with conditions that are difficult to accept. We must weigh these conditions against the certainty of our destruction." Elder Lurik nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, Captain Melok. And that is why we must consider not only the immediate benefits, but also the long-term consequences. An alliance with the humans will change us in ways we cannot yet fully predict." A senior fleet commander, Admiral Korin, spoke up with a tone of cautious optimism. "We must also consider the technological advantages they bring. Their weapons, their tactics, they could give us the edge we need to defeat the Thren decisively." Others, however, voiced their concerns more strongly. "Are we to become mere puppets in their game?" questioned one representative. "What will happen to our autonomy? Our culture? Our very identity as a people?" The debate raged on, with no clear consensus emerging. Each faction had its own perspective, and the arguments for and against the alliance were evenly matched. The council session extended late into the night, with no resolution in sight. As the hours dragged on, Melok found himself increasingly anxious. The decision seemed to be slipping out of their grasp, and every moment of indecision felt like a victory for their enemies. Finally, as dawn approached, Elder Lurik called for a recess. The leaders dispersed, each retreating to their quarters to consider the gravity of the situation. Melok, exhausted and disheartened, headed back to his quarters with Kavol at his side. "What now?" Kavol asked as they walked through the dimly lit corridors of the High Command's complex. "What if they decide to reject the humans' offer?" Melok shook his head, his mind heavy with the possibilities. "Then we face the Thren alone, with no hope of survival. We would be signing our own extinction warrant." Kavol sighed deeply. "And if we accept, we lose our independence. We become subjects to another power." Melok stopped and looked at his friend, feeling the weight of their choices more acutely than ever. "We have to make a decision that secures our survival, but also preserves our dignity and identity as a people. It's a balance we must find. In the silence that followed, they both knew that the decision was not one they could make lightly. The fate of the Bulan Empire and their place in the galaxy was hanging in the balance. The next morning, the council reconvened, and the atmosphere was charged with a sense of impending decision. Elder Lyric called for a vote, and each leader cast their ballot in a solemn, almost ritualistic manner. The result was a narrow but decisive approval of the alliance with the humans. Murloc felt a wave of mixed emotions as the vote was tallied. The decision was made, but it was clear that this new path would not be an easy one. They had chosen to accept the humans' offer, and with it, they had embraced a future that was both uncertain and fraught with new challenges. The first order of business was to formalize the alliance. Representatives from the UTA arrived to oversee the integration process. Their presence was a stark reminder of the new reality that the Bulan would face. Human officers began to coordinate with Bulan forces, setting up joint operations and familiarizing themselves with Bulan technology and tactics. Murloc met with the human commander once more, in a private briefing room. The human was as calm and composed as ever, but there was a noticeable shift in his demeanor, an edge of satisfaction, perhaps, or a hint of something darker. "Captain Murloc," the human said, extending his hand in a gesture of formal greeting, "I trust the Council's decision aligns with our previous discussions." Murloc shook the offered hand, feeling the weight of their agreement settling heavily on him. "Yes, Commander, we have accepted your terms. But know this alliance will be a test for both our peoples. We must ensure that it benefits us both, not just one side." The human's smile remained, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "Agreed. We're looking forward to working with you, Captain. The Thren will not know what hit them." As the human commander departed, Murloc found himself alone with his thoughts. The alliance was official, and the Bulan would now fight alongside the humans against the Thren. But at what cost? Their independence was compromised, and their future uncertain. They had chosen survival over sovereignty, and the implications of that choice were only beginning to unfold. Murloc looked out the viewport of his command ship, watching the human fleet as it moved in formation. The sight was both reassuring and unsettling. The humans had saved them, but their presence loomed over the Bulan like a shadow. The future was unwritten, and every decision they made from this point forward would shape their destiny in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. In the days that followed, the integration of Bulan and human forces began in earnest. The combined fleets conducted joint drills and simulations, preparing for the inevitable return of the Thren. The Bulan adapted to human technology, while the humans made efforts to understand and integrate Bulan tactics. The alliance was proving to be a formidable force, and their preparations were meticulous. But as Murloc watched the interactions between the two forces, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were entering into a new kind of war, one that extended beyond the battlefield and into the very fabric of their existence. The Thren were indeed regrouping, and their next assault was only a matter of time. But as the Bulan and humans prepared for the inevitable clash, Murloc and his people faced a different kind of battle, one for their own identity and the future they were forging together, the clash of titans. As the weeks passed, the alliance between the Bulan and the humans solidified. Joint training exercises became a regular part of life, with both sides adapting to each other's styles and technologies. The Thren had been silent since the initial attack, but the uneasy peace only served to heighten the tension within the ranks. Both the Bulan and human forces knew that the next engagement could tip the balance of the war decisively. Murloc found himself caught between two worlds. On one hand, the integration with the humans had brought a renewed sense of hope and strength. The human technology and tactics were impressive, and their strategic acumen had already made a significant difference in their defensive capabilities. On the other hand, the very presence of the humans on Bulan soil was a constant reminder of the price they had paid for survival. The alliance came with its own set of complications, and Murloc was acutely aware of the political and cultural ramifications. The Thren, meanwhile, had not been idle. Their forces were regrouping and consolidating, preparing for what they hoped would be a decisive strike. Intelligence reports indicated that the Thren were amassing their fleet for a massive offensive, one that would target the core worlds of the Bulan Empire. The impending assault was designed to break the back of the Bulan resistance and force a final surrender. In the midst of these preparations, Murloc received orders from the newly established Joint Command Center. The humans had intercepted intelligence suggesting that the Thren were preparing to launch their assault sooner than expected. A counter-offensive was in the works, and Murloc's fleet was to play a critical role in the upcoming engagement. The command center was a hive of activity as officers and strategists from both sides coordinated their efforts. The war room was filled with holographic displays and real-time data feeds, with human and Bulan officers working side by side. The intensity in the room was palpable, and Murloc could feel the pressure mounting as the final preparations were made. As the battle loomed on the horizon, the atmosphere on the command ship was charged with anticipation. Murloc and his team reviewed the battle plans one last time, making final adjustments and ensuring that every detail was accounted for. The human commanders, with their efficient and methodical approach, had impressed the Bulan with their precision and effectiveness. However, the ultimate test would come when the fleets faced the Thren in open combat. The moment of truth arrived as the combined fleets prepared to engage. The Bulan and human forces assembled in their battle formations, a formidable array of ships and firepower ready to confront their enemies. The Joint Command Center orchestrated the operation with seamless coordination, leveraging both human technology and Bulan expertise. The Thren fleet emerged from the dark reaches of space, a vast and menacing armada that loomed like a storm on the horizon. Their ships, sleek and intimidating, were equipped with advanced weaponry and reinforced armor. The sight of the Thren fleet, with its deadly array of ships, was a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. As the two fleets closed in on each other, the tension reached a fever pitch. The command ships of both sides exchanged final communications, and the order to engage was given. The void of space erupted in a blaze of light and sound as the fleets clashed in a massive and decisive battle. The initial moments of the engagement were chaotic and intense. The human and Bulan forces fought with determination and skill, their combined strength pushing back the Thren onslaught. The Thren ships, while formidable, struggled to adapt to the unexpected coordination and effectiveness of the Allied fleets. The humans' advanced tactics and the Bulan's defensive strategies created a formidable synergy that caught the Thren off guard. Murloc maneuvered his ship with precision, coordinating with human commanders to exploit the weaknesses in the Thren formation. The battle raged on, a relentless exchange of fire and strategy as the fleets fought for dominance. The Thren, despite their technological prowess, found themselves increasingly on the defensive. The human and Bulan forces, united in their purpose, pressed the attack with unyielding resolve. As the battle progressed, it became clear that the combined forces of the Bulan and humans were gaining the upper hand. The Thren, faced with a determined and well-coordinated enemy, began to falter. Their ships, once so imposing, were now being systematically dismantled by the relentless assault of the Allied fleets. In the heart of the conflict, Murloc felt a surge of determination. The Alliance, despite its challenges and complexities, was proving its worth on the battlefield. The Thren's once overwhelming superiority was being eroded by the combined might of the Bulan and humans. It was a moment of triumph, a vindication of their difficult decision to forge an alliance with a species they had once regarded with suspicion. But even as victory seemed within reach, the battle was far from over. The Thren fleet, though reeling from the onslaught, had not yet been completely defeated. Their command ships, heavily armored and resilient, continued to fight with tenacity. The final stages of the battle were marked by fierce engagements and desperate maneuvers as both sides fought for the decisive edge. Murloc, alongside the human commanders, orchestrated a series of coordinated strikes designed to break the Thren's remaining defenses. The combined firepower of the Bulan and human fleets focused on the Thren command ships, aiming to cripple their ability to continue the fight. The Thren, though battered and bruised, fought with a fierce desperation, unwilling to surrender. As the battle reached its climax, the Thren fleet began to retreat. The Allied forces pressed their advantage, pursuing the retreating enemy and ensuring that their victory was absolute. The remnants of the Thren fleet scattered, their once imposing armada reduced to a shadow of its former self. In the aftermath of the battle, the command center was filled with a sense of weary satisfaction. The combined forces of the Bulan and humans had achieved a hard-fought victory, but the cost had been significant. The battle had taken a toll on both fleets, and the scars of the conflict were evident in the damaged ships and exhausted crews. Murloc stood on the bridge of his command ship, surveying the aftermath of the engagement. The sight of the defeated Thren fleet, scattered and retreating, was a testament to the strength and resolve of the Alliance. The battle had been a turning point, a moment that would be remembered for years to come. The victory was bittersweet, however. The cost of the battle had been high, and the war was far from over. The Thren would regroup and prepare for their next move, and the Alliance would need to remain vigilant and prepared for future challenges. As Murloc looked out at the remnants of the battlefield, he knew that the Alliance had proven its worth. The humans, once seen as outsiders and potential threats, had become invaluable allies in the fight against a common enemy. The Alliance had survived its first major test, and the Bulan and humans had emerged stronger for it. But even as the victory was celebrated, the challenges ahead loomed large. The Thren were not defeated completely, and the Alliance would need to continue its efforts to secure peace and stability. The future was uncertain, but the combined strength and determination of the Bulan and humans offered a glimmer of hope. The battle had been a hard-fought struggle, but it had also been a testament to the power of unity and cooperation. The Alliance, forged in the crucible of war, had proven that even the most formidable challenges could be overcome through collaboration and shared purpose. As Murloc and his fellow commanders prepared for the next phase of the war, they did so with the knowledge that they had forged a bond that would shape the future of their peoples. The Alliance had been tested and had emerged victorious, and the path ahead would be marked by both challenges and opportunities. In the end, the battle had not just been a fight for survival, it had been a fight for a future where the Bulan and humans could stand together as allies and partners. The victory was a testament to their strength and resolve, and it marked the beginning of a new chapter in their shared history. With the Thren fleet in retreat and the immediate threat diminished, the focus shifted to rebuilding and preparing for the future. The Alliance had proven its strength, but the road ahead would require continued cooperation and determination. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over.